Hello and welcome back to Partyline Chat. My name is Michael Finney. Today we've got a group of folks hanging out, ready to talk about Duro dogs. Will you please introduce yourselves one more time?
Hey, Michael. Thanks for having us. I'm Jack Laskey. I'm the CEO of Nifty Jigs, and Nifty Jigs is the creator of the game Duro Dogs. And I'm very honored to be joined here by a lot of the folks, both my co-founder at Nifty Jigs, Dave, and also a number of folks who've had a big role in making Nifty Jigs and making Duro Dogs possible. So really excited for the conversation today.
Hey guys, my name's Brandon, and I'm an engineer at Handcash. And Handcash is the wallet that kind of powers Duro Dogs, that enables micropayments and NFTs through the Run protocol. And I was the lead engineer integrating the Run protocol into the Handcash wallet.
Hey everyone, my name is Brenton. I'm the creator of Run, the protocol that is powering Duro Dogs. And it's really cool to see because I think from the beginning we wanted to get integration with different wallets, and I think games were like always the goal from the beginning. And so this is like in a lot of ways the culmination of a lot of thinking and work for a long time, of course brought to life by the Duro Dogs and Handcash team. So yeah.
Hey guys. Hey Michael, thanks for inviting me on. My name is Dave Mullen-Muhr. I am the aforementioned co-founder of Duro Dogs and Nifty Jigs. Excited to get kind of into what we've been up to and what we're working on a little bit more today.
All right, I'll go next. I'm T38 or Taylor. I am an employee of Hector Lopez on Twitter Spaces, and there I promote Duro Dogs. But all joking aside, I'm Taylor from Built by Gamers, strategic advisor there on helping them. They're an esports organization, helping them integrate Bitcoin SV blockchain into their fan engagement platform. And I spend a lot of time on Twitter Spaces, so I love talking a lot. Dan, your turn.
What's up, everybody? My name is Dan Wagner. I am the co-founder of Haste Arcade, which is a gaming platform that uses micropayments to reward people for playing. Have been involved in the space for a long time. Got to know the guys over at Duro Dogs really well, and happy to support everything that they're doing, and look forward to integrations that we can do together in the future.
Integrations are coming your way quickly here. Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll talk about it, but got some fun mock-ups to show you, Dan.
That sounds great.
So let's start at the beginning. How did all of this come together? Where did this begin? What was the kernel of the idea for creating Duro Dogs?
So I actually have a fairly specific memory of that. So we launched as Nifty Jigs with a slightly more open-ended focus in terms of what games we're going to develop. We knew that we needed better infrastructure to support our broader goals in terms of having really easily accessible NFTs in BSV, and really, kind of our umbrella goal as an organization is driving BSV adoption, getting more users using BSV. And so we thought Handcash was kind of the right partner just because we felt like they were the most aligned in terms of really prioritizing applications and their ability to drive adoption and providing the tools to create a really, really friendly onboarding experience, just a great experience in general. And so we had been speaking with Handcash about, okay, can we do this thing? Is this possible? Are our goals aligning? And we eventually said, yeah, this is a great fit. And we were just kind of thinking about, at least on the Nifty side of things, we were putting together just kind of a proposal for what's an MVP we can do to kind of show how this integration works. And Handcash is, famous for their experiment of the Duro as sort of a alternate denomination of BSV that's supposed to be more app friendly. And so we just kind of spontaneously arrived at the alliterative idea for Project Duro Dog. And we didn't have very many ideas beyond it, but it just kind of felt right. And we've just been running with it since. And it's really kind of expanded from what initially was like a proof of concept project for our integration with Handcash. And we ultimately just began to see the potential in a way that exceeded our initial expectations. And it just kind of made sense to, in a way, go all in on the Duro Dogs concept, because we just think it has really enormous potential not only to drive adoption of BSV, but also to really help us kind of create this creator economy that we think that these tools that BSV makes possible, like payments and highly scalable NFTs, we think those are building blocks for creators that are going to really reshape how not only games but applications across the internet are created and consumed. And Duro Dogs is just such an open-ended and kind of fun palette for exploring those options and also building the tools to help us and others explore those more quickly, that it's just become like a really huge focus for Nifty Jigs as a company platform.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what has worked so far? This game has been out for, would you say, 3.5 months, maybe? 3 months?
Yeah, December 6th is when we launched.
All right, so 3 months safely. What's working so far? What isn't working so far?
One thing that's clearly working is, so the initial game is this trainer where you start with a dog with no XP. You can do play actions with the dog. You can pet, have the dog lay, these different play actions with animations. And the play actions will cost you energy, which recharges over time, and earn you XP, which helps you level up. And it also earns you treats, which are kind of an in-game currency that you can use to buy different NFTs. I think by far the most popular aspect of the trainer is the ability to dig, which is a way to spend treats and spend energy to have a chance at winning NFTs of different degrees of rarity. People are digging like crazy. So people love earning NFTs, which isn't so surprising, I think, based on like the broader NFT space and the ability to make that economical because of the efficiency of Bitcoin SV. Makes it easy to do, and you can do it in really high volume, and people are doing that. So I think people have loved that so far as kind of like the killer app of the trainer is digging for sure. And then recently we launched the first expansion game, or actually it's not launched yet. It's being tested by a group of like 200 testers, but we'll launch soon. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun because now there's a more competitive element. There is a competitive element in trainer as far as people trying to level up most quickly, since there's NFTs you can get if you get to level 10 first, or whatever time it takes to get to level 10, you get an NFT. But like the gold graduation cap was only available for the first 100, so that was popular. But now that there's more of a directly competitive element with Rough Runner and more of the expansion games that are launched by us and by third parties, I think those will become more and more popular relative to trainer. But we'll have to kind of wait and see.
Are there third parties building games right now? I see the chess game kind of hinted at in the park.
Yeah, there's a handful of third-party games. Some of those are things that we had a larger role in initiating. The game that's currently listed in the store, I think it's called Bark Battle, is actually being created by one of our employees who's just really kind of, obviously he sees the potential behind what we're doing and kind of see it has like a inside lane, I guess, into where we're headed, and just wanted to spend his free time kind of taking the opportunity to create a game. And I think these games have the potential to make some serious. And then there's some folks just from kind of our community who've also come to us proposing projects or just started building or designing things, assuming the tools are going to come. And it's really exciting for us because we haven't even released anything really in terms of actually helping people contribute to the space.
Is it specifically Duro Dogs that you're wanting to kind of open up an ecosystem of, or could you say that Nifty Jigs as an ecosystem is the real goal here? Where, I mean, is it safe to say if someone is developing games, you want them to do it on BSV, you want them to do it on Nifty Jigs? Like, is there any people that you would say, you know, we don't want you to build in this ecosystem?
Let me put it like this. Certainly, I would encourage anyone to build a game on BSV, and I think Nifty Jigs is a fantastic, best tool to do it. But I do think that there's something to be said also for, you know, we have to recognize that we're a small community. We don't have a lot of big teams. It's a lot of individual folks or small teams trying to make a difference. And I think that the folks on this call have been collaborating such that we've managed to create some things that I think have real potential to drive adoption. And I think that continuing to add to that and add to these things is going to help get us there more quickly than just having lots of sort of diverse projects or projects collaborative. So I would definitely say, you know, Nifty Jigs is a fantastic platform for NFTs. But if you're on the fence about what to do, I would definitely say build something like build a game that uses Duro Dogs and has an ILP in it. Because I think that's the best way to drive kind of synergy between this sort of, I don't want to say mono or uni app, but I think that by layering our efforts into kind of more cohesive types of user experiences, we're a lot more likely to have something that really stands out quickly in terms of bringing a really unique experience value prop to a user, such that we can start generating these sorts of viral effects and bring many, many more users to the BSV space. And I think that by doing that through this type of collaboration, then we'll be in a position where, yeah, no matter what you're building, no matter who you are, if you're a solo, a huge sort of
I think the reason I bring that up is because I'll talk to people and they have it in their mind that Nifty Jigs is Duro Dogs, and if they want to, I mean, Duro Dogs is sitting over here and it's doing its thing, and it's this game that's being built. So if I want to build something, it's like I could build something in the Duro Dogs ecosystem, or I can go somewhere else. And I just don't want people to lose sight of Duro Dogs is really just the first implementation of a Nifty Jigs game. But Nifty Jigs, the platform, the scope of that is, I mean, anything that uses digital goods is going to want to use Nifty Jigs.
You know, and by extension, you know, Brenton might have something to say about that as the Run protocol developer as well, because like these are kind of things that are shelved into each other. Say maybe at the base layer you have BSV, and then you have the Run protocol. You have the specific flavor of that known as Nifty Jigs, and then you have the actual game ecosystem, which is Duro Dogs, right? So it's kind of you know, a forking path in that sense, but it doesn't necessarily mean that these things can't exist.
And let me frame a discussion I had recently with a group of people around that. So everyone is saying, okay, you have several different platforms that use their own protocol. Are they all able to integrate with Nifty Jigs? Because Nifty Jigs is on Run. So we might want to touch on that. But then at the same time, if it's on Run, there's a lot of people that will say, why are other platforms building on other protocols that are not Run? Because some of the critiques of Run is that there's scaling issues, and I know Nifty Jigs will refute that, but that's kind of the things I hear out in the community is Run inherently scalable? And then if there's different platforms like RelayX using Run, Take It NFT uses Run, you've got these different platforms using Run, why won't they just integrate with Nifty Jigs right off the bat is another thing I hear. So just throwing that into that framing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the layer, I'll answer both questions. So I think the layered approach, where you have BSV and then you have, your token and smart contract protocol on top, which is Run in this case, and then you have Nifty Jigs, which is a specialization of Run, and then you of course have your application layer on top of that. That's totally normal, and you actually see that in the Ethereum ecosystems too, where they have the names escaping me. I want to say it's either Wax or it's another platform, but basically they serve as the same role as what Duro Dogs is doing, because there is a need for that. There's Run doesn't entirely meet the needs of end application developers that just want to get stuff done. So I think that as for like different protocols and why different apps and integration, well, I think people will choose different protocols depending on kind of what they see as maybe their strengths. And I don't know if that's always true, because I think, for example, take the scaling issues. I think that, the quote unquote scaling issues that plague all the token protocols really have various solutions out there, and they're the same for all of them. So, but I think there's been a lot of confusion about what that actually means in practice. So people have gone different protocols from that reason, but also because some people don't want to build their infrastructure on JavaScript. Run is a JavaScript-based platform. Maybe you want to write your app in a different language, and that's okay. And in the future, it should be possible to take JavaScript and even abstract that away within Run to where we can have other languages and other SDK languages for integrations. But right now it's JavaScript based, so that for certain people that might be a con or it might be a pro. It depends on what you're doing. We think it's a pro because JavaScript is everywhere and it's easy to use. But I get it. I get why people might want to experiment. And that's the other part, is that we're in this wave right now where we're probably the only scalable, massively scalable UTXO based blockchain. And figuring out tokens and smart contracts on this is new. And so there's a lot of people that are just experimenting and trying to come up with new protocols and new ideas on this. And that should happen. This is the natural path. So I think in time we'll see closer integration. In my head, I've got kind of a way that we could integrate, allow Run to interoperate with, say, Sensible or, whatever else is out there. I think this is definitely possible in the future. But you got to keep in mind that we're building up from a very primitive system, maybe simple system, which is Bitcoin. That's a complement to Bitcoin, BSV. And we're trying to add this functionality for tokens and smart contracts on top of it. And that's just going to take some effort. It's going to take, a lot of work to make happen. So I wouldn't expect interoperability overnight. The shortest ways to do that are probably to have bridges, companies and individuals who connect the different protocols together. But I'm pretty sure it will happen in time.
Ultimately, the answer out there is, if you want your digital goods to be interoperable across, let's just call it some gardens, if they're all on Nifty Jigs, then that's inherently going to be much easier.
I think that this term interoperability is, I on the one hand, I think it's sort of the goal, and on the other hand, I think it's a massive distraction. What I mean by that is, so I still play the piano, but my sort of primary professional endeavor at one point was being a jazz pianist. And there's this kind of strange but 100% true thing about playing the piano, especially in a format that's sort of oriented around improvisation, that imposing rules onto a situation brings out more creativity. So if you just sit down at the piano and you say, I'm just going to, no, there's no format, there's no restrictions, there's nothing, I'm just going to play from my heart, and whatever happens, happens. That can be fantastic, but it's really challenging. And a lot of times it comes out sort of as just kind of amorphous nothing, to be honest. Whereas when you're playing music that's more kind of, let's say, rooted in a specific tradition, or even if it's just something even more synthetic, but you're imposing specific types of rules and restrictions upon what you're doing, typically it's much, much easier to be creative and to create something that's beautiful and meaningful. And I see a parallel to this sort of interoperability question and challenge, where there's this kind of demand upon companies building in BSV and on blockchain in general, like you should just be interoperable with everyone always, and if you're not, you're doing something wrong. And I think that's just not true, in that there's really not that much point for most people to interoperate with others at any given point in time. Certainly, if you can get to a point where interoperability is much, much simpler, that's great. That has its benefits, of course. I'm not saying it doesn't. But our approach at Nifty Jigs and with Duro Dogs has not necessarily been, let's interoperate everywhere all at once. It's been, let's create a really simple way of interoperating in some very, like, much more specific type of way that's much more sort of innately powerful. And when looking through the context of Duro Dogs and what we did with this game that we released called Rough Runner, that's kind of our mindset is, hey, we can provide you tools where you can integrate this specific dog with its animations into a 2D game. You can issue NFTs that dog can wear inside of our trainer environment. Try and do something that's fun and meaningful with those basic tools. And we have an audience that's kind of ready for you and ready to enjoy that. And that's not as creative as saying, like, hey, go out anywhere and do whatever you want. Use whatever wallet you want. Use whatever token protocol you want. And we're just always going to be interoperable with you no matter what. It's much more restrictive than that. But I think that we're actually a lot more likely to create something of value this way versus focusing on interoperating with everybody.
Yeah, you don't want... Oh, go ahead, Brandon.
There's a great programmer called Uncle Bob, and he has a book where he kind of breaks down the three different paradigms of programming, and each time, like, computer science has taken a huge step forward, it's by limiting certain things you can do with the programming aspect. And I kind of see the same thing here. The way I see Duro Dogs, and if I was developing a game, I'd want Duro Dogs to be the platform where my NFTs are distributed. Like, if I have this one obscure game, and if somehow I can inject my item as a dig item, that's just a way to piggyback off of Duro Dog's success and get people to try out my game.
Yeah, and this goes back to an earlier question about, like, can you use Nifty Jigs for all sorts of games or just Duro Dogs? So I think, like, one game that we have on our roadmap that I think some people are excited about is Hash War, a card game that we were talking about kind of before Duro Dogs. It was our first idea. And that's still on the roadmap, and we want all sorts of games that are totally unrelated to Duro Dogs to become part of the ecosystem ultimately. But I think, yeah, like Brandon said, it makes sense just because, you know, there's about like 10,000 Duro Dogs out there now. So if you create an item for a dog or create some functionality for these users that have these NFTs, you kind of have this kind of baked in customer base. So I think for a lot of people, it's more fun just to, like, start from scratch and create something new, and we want to support that. but just expanding the ecosystem and having a customer base on day one that's really excited to play, which I think we've seen so far with Rough Runner, is a huge opportunity where you don't have to build a world from scratch. You can just build off of something that already exists.
I had a question for Brenton. I know you guys a while back were working on some type of peer-to-peer way of sending a jig. Is that still on the roadmap?
Yeah, it's definitely still on the roadmap. So basically the way you do this is you would have both sides of so there's multiple ways to do this, but let's say I think what is probably going to be the best way to do this. You have both sides of the peer-to-peer send. Let's say two wallets or a game and an exchange or something like that. They're both running instances of what we call RunDB. This is our indexer. It basically keeps track of all the jigs, all the tokens that you know about. And when you go to send something peer-to-peer, the party that's sending would give a transaction to the party that's receiving that just has the send operation in it. And if the receiver is already up to date with run tokens that they might be receiving, that's it. You're good. But if there's some history that's been lost, maybe they weren't watching the full blockchain, or it's probably the main reason. Maybe they weren't indexing it for some reason. Then there can be a communication protocol between both sides where they exchange the transactions for that token that the other side doesn't have. And this looks like it can be done pretty optimized. But of course, if you're sending a token with literally transactions, it could take a while. So you want to try to, if you're running a service that's going to be receiving tokens, you want to do some work yourself. This is sort of like a principle kind of on Run, is that to get better service, you have to do work. And so if you're expecting to receive dogs in your exchange, you should be trying to pre-index those dogs before they hit them. Just like Coinbase runs a Bitcoin node, same thing. This is just on the token level. There is one further step we can take this, which is if these two companies or parties do trust each other, then the full exchange of these transactions doesn't need to happen. And they don't have to trust necessarily each other. They can also trust a third party that they both mutually trust. But I think there's a path down that too. But I think step one is first to make it so that if you receive a transaction, to have a simple protocol where if you receive a transaction, you need to exchange some other transactions with it. There's a way to do that. That's, to be honest, we're working on RunDB 2. This is more of a scalability upgrade to RunDB, sorry. And then that's on the roadmap next. So, I'd expect this sometime this year for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess Handcash could whitelist crypto fights, and we trust the company Crypto Fights. If they're sending us a jig, then we know that it's authentic.
Yeah, and I'd say one more thing, going back to another comment that somebody made. Jack, you made this. You said that when you're playing piano, limits inspire creativity. And when you said that, I kind of got chills for a second, because that was another fundamental truth that kind of came out in the development of Run, was that if you had a protocol that it's hard to really describe this on a call, but if you had a protocol a token protocol or smart contract protocol that could literally do anything without any limits on how ownership might be transferred between items or how updates might be sequenced. And it's possible to build Run in a way where it's more, let's say, less constrained than it is. It's not a constrained protocol, but just trying to give an example. The point was, in order to enable a certain amount of programmability, you almost had to put some limits on it. We found that some things weren't possible without that. And so that was just kind of funny to hear that you also experience this on the application level and in your personal life too. I think it's just a general truth.
There's that classic, a kite can't fly without a string pulling it. Constraints.
Beautiful.
Let me ask a quick question, a little off topic, but to the Duro Dogs team. When we were talking about kind of games, additional games, are there going to be I mean, would you foresee or want there to be a future where there could be games related to certain themes of dig items, like a pirate game that the pirate set relates to? Do something like that? Like, is that part of the roadmap, or is it? How do you guys pick the themes of dig items and the different sets?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff that's stemming from that. So I think a lot of this will be up to third-party creators. But the market dynamics, you can play with the market dynamics in a way that's really advantageous for you as a developer. So, for example, a pirate game. So there's like all of these items being sold in the alpha marketplace, which is just a Discord group. You can also just do trades peer-to-peer. But there's all these like low value items. Someone just did a trade over the weekend for like 1,100 different items. I don't know what the price was, but this isn't like tens of thousands of dollars. This is probably like $100 or something. So there's all these low value items. And what's fun is you could build a game that uses these things and kind of scoop up a bunch of low value items first. And then in your game, so you're making some pirate game and you have all these like eye patches. In your game, that item is super valuable. So you could make a game that makes an item that you have a large supply of more valuable.
Are you about to
and
tell
obviously
people to corner the market? Don't tell people. I want to do that before they think about it.
People may be doing currently. You never know.
So wait, let me. That brings up a good point of like rarity and stuff. Like when you guys launch your marketplace, I mean, you might do some kind of rarity chart, but that's actually only relevant to like the supply. What you're describing actually kind of turns on the head. Like the concept of rarity is pretty subjective depending on the context. Like some games, some things might be more valuable.
Right. It's also relative to the user base. So like things that aren't rare currently are like if there's 1,000 of an item, that's like not rare. But we only have pretty small base of users currently. So when we retire items, this isn't like a guarantee, but like we don't really plan on bringing items back once they're retired from Dig. So if we have 100 million users playing all sorts of different games, then a 1 of 3,000 item is pretty rare at that point.
What do you guys?
Go ahead.
Oh, what do you guys make of like the rare candy market, where they just? I guess the key difference between Duro Dogs and rare candy is, I mean, there's a lot, but Duro Dogs is kind of an infinite mint. Like you can mint a dog no matter what, versus the rare candy approach where there's a limited supply, there's clear rarity, and then there's just huge speculation afterwards. Like, what do you guys make of that? And like, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I think that they're just really different games. And I use the term game intentionally here because I think that the rare candy game is sort of like, it's really important for the game to understand like what's rare, not rare. Because I'm pretty sure that the same with Duro Dogs and these collections on rare candy, every NFT is unique. That's true, I assume, right?
Yeah.
Well, and the serial number, even for Duro Dogs, like that's shown some relevance.
Right.
Your dog is your dog.
Yeah.
One.
So for us, it was more about kind of like, we wanted every dog to be one of a kind. We wanted to be able to generate millions or billions of one-of-a-kind dogs.
But Jackson, you also want some dogs to be more equal than others.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun to have some things be more rare than others, but I guess what I'm saying is that...
Oh, I was making a joke about Animal Farm.
Yeah, I know. Sorry about that. Sorry for not picking up or acknowledging your reference. Orwell would be proud. So, yeah, I guess I just think the point of our game is less about your dog is rare, your dog is not rare. And it's just more about kind of using your dog and having fun with your dog. People are, of course, like speculating within the game, making money from things related to the game. But I don't think that it's as important to us to sort of make it clear from the outset what is the most valuable thing, what is the least valuable thing. it's just not a game that's oriented around kind of like trading and valuing.
Did you guys foresee the kind of play to earn model emerging? I've seen that in the marketplace where there's some people that will dig up items and spend a lot of time digging, for purposes of being able to sell them. I know that's something that you obviously could have forecasted happening, but is that part of the kind of the adoption model?
Yeah, I think play to earn's fun. I think, especially, a lot of people are doing play to earn gaming. Like the Philippines are a big area for that. You don't want high fees, right? So play to earn works a lot better on an efficient blockchain. I'm not surprised that people are doing a lot of that, and I think it's fun. I mean, these dig items, people are going crazy on dig. I don't want to be digging, as long as some people are. So I'm hopping in the marketplace and buying things from people, and that's a win-win for both of us. So I'm not surprised at all. I think there's going to be more of that, and I think since that model's been kind of proven with games like Axie Infinity, I think other people will develop games with Nifty Jigs that have a big play to earn emphasis, and it's a great tool to build a game like that, since you're not going to lose a bunch of your profit in transaction fees, and also just the startup costs to get started. With Duro Dogs, you can start for free, really. You don't need to buy your first dog unless you want to sell it or trade it, and you could dig with that first dog. So without spending any money, and people have done this, you can make BSV in Duro Dogs, and that's just not the case for a game like Axie, where the inefficiency and the transaction fees that stem from that, and also kind of the speculative nature. So to start playing, you're looking at hundreds or $1,000+ it's just kind of a different target audience, which is much more speculator focused. Whereas I think with Duro Dogs, you can play to have fun, or you can, if you want to do play to earn, you can start with just much less startup cost.
Yeah, but you know what? There is the opportunity to also like buy some of the very rare items too. So if you wanted to operate as a whale in that sense, that is available to you. There were a couple of very limited items in the first set, and then generally when you guys list some of the new sets or new collections into the shop, those are purchasable. So if you have a lot of treats or you don't, but you want those items, you could get it via doing all of the tricks and stuff and get your treats from that and then buy the items, or you could just buy your treats to trade for the rare items too. So it kind of has a couple different approaches, I think, within the game.
So if Niv, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead. I'll jump in after you.
I was going to tangent conversation, so if you had something relevant to that, do it.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was going to say, I think that's one of the really cool things about Duro Dogs is, to me, it feels like a game you can find in the Apple App Store. Like, BSV is pretty much invisible to the user until they go to get involved in buying and selling stuff. And you compare that to a game built on Ethereum where you're going to be paying transaction fees for everything you do. That's not going to be possible to subsidize, but on BSV you can. And so I just think that model is really powerful. It's like very welcoming to new people who you can go tell a friend about this game and they can just give it a try. You don't have to get them up on Coinbase or something. I mean, now in Handcash, which is really cool that you can buy it in the app, but even still, typing in that credit card and all that it'd be nice if we didn't have to do that. And this is a good demonstration that we don't.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good point you make, Brenton. So, like, is there an intention to kind of move away from wallets with this game, or to onboard folks straight into Duro Dogs without them needing a wallet, and then really to participate in the economics? Maybe you're creating a wallet for them that they have no idea about, right? And then you're basically giving them access to that wallet should they choose to join in the economic components.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're working on something like that. There's a lot of browser-based games where you kind of just go to a domain and you're in the game. Obviously, they try to convert you later to generate some revenue off of you. And the other negative is there's usually ads everywhere on the screen, so they can make money that way. But we're working on a new flow so that we could mimic that to reduce the friction, which is really low compared to other blockchain play-to-earn games.
Sure.
But higher than a game where you just land and start playing. Like Wordle being kind of a different type of game, but a good example where there's no account. You just hop on and you're playing, and you come back the next day and it remembers your history, plays.
Because you could say, right, that like this game is really, a Handcash onboarding platform.
Currently, yeah, for sure.
Right now.
Yeah.
Can I ask you guys about what does the current play-to-earn kind of ecosystem look like? I don't think I can sign on to Twitter without seeing so-and-so company is investing 70 million, 50 million into the metaverse. And like, what does it look like on other chains? And like, do they have functional games?
There's definitely functional games, but there's also a lot of hype where there's nothing currently behind it. I also, there's a lot of money being poured into this space, but a lot of it is sort of into these kind of flashier, high-profile teams where there's some kind of like a blockchain foundation type money. And yeah, I don't think that there's like a huge... I guess I would say that it's just maybe a little bit deceptive, I think, how much money is going into this space, and that it's not quite as much as you might think based on the sort of flashy, larger checks that are getting written. And I think that's in part just because there's really still not that many people in the NFT space. It seems like there's a lot because you're sort of inundated with it on a day-to-day basis, or my guess is you are. But I spoke with a company past Friday, and the person I was speaking with said that by their research, there's about 250,000 people who've bought an NFT. And I don't know where that number came from or if it's real or not, but it's not that many people. And let's say it's 10 times as many than that, actually, 2.5 million. It's still relatively small compared to the amount of money pouring into the space. But I think that the challenge for everybody is still onboarding and creating games that are fun and actually. And I think that even if we look to be at like a disadvantage based on the size of BSV community today, which is very small, don't get it twisted. It's super small. But I do think that everyone is still dealing with the same battles, and whoever cracks it first, and I think that we've got a good shot at it. I think things can change really quickly.
So would you say the secret ingredient is just a fun game? Or is there more to it?
I do think that fun is the number one thing, and the second most important thing is having the ability to actually get people to play it.
Well, and let's point out that gambling is fun. Speculation is fun. Leveling up is fun.
Yeah, but I think that there's actually a lot of people who don't love gambling for real money. And would
I
be
don't necessarily mean. I just mean speculation in general, like risking time or energy to try and get something rare or something better, or to get a higher score, or to put in the time to be able to level up.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways for a game to be fun. It doesn't have to be like, Counter-Strike thing. That's there's plenty of other rate games that are utilizing all kinds of different mechanics. We have some pretty interesting ones in the BSV space that we can access that others really can't. But yeah, I think it's just you have to build something that's fun, people want to engage with, and it has to be discoverable, which means you have to have great onboarding, which means you have to have virality. And I think if you have those three things, great onboarding, fun game, and virality, then sky's the limit.
So can I use that as kind of a segue to point out?
Wait, I had one question. How does that square with you, Brenton, and your experience with Snapchat? Like, weren't you like really involved with Bitmoji and how that eventually got integrated? Like, how did they make those decisions?
Well, this is definitely related. So I think, I'll answer this question. I'm just going to swing around to it. I think the idea that there are like different kinds of fun that people can have is like absolutely true. And right now, I think a lot of crypto is capitalizing on, people's desire to speculate and to gamble, basically, in all different forms. But I don't know if we've peaked at how many people might be interested in that. But it's not everybody on this planet is going to be interested. There's a whole lot of people that maybe for financial reasons or maybe just interest reasons, that's not their thing. And so I think what Duro Dogs is doing is really good because it's bringing another angle to what blockchains can be used for, and it's based. And actually, I think it's a really good angle because idle style games, which I would put Duro Dogs in that category where you can make a certain amount of moves over time. Those are just incredible. I think they might be the most popular games on the App Store. I'm pretty sure if you go in there, you'll find. I don't know. You'd have to go look, but I'm pretty sure those are the most popular, and that's been hard to do up until now because of the transaction fee costs across blockchains. But we have that capability on BSV. But to answer your question about like Snapchat, I think one of the things I remember most is we would say build something that teenagers would want to use. And when you come at it from that angle, you just think differently. Maybe they don't have a lot of money, for example, but they have more time. And I think, Duro Dogs feeds into that. And then integrating social elements into it is also very important. And I actually think that this is, I agree that the BSV ecosystem is small and the crypto ecosystem is also small compared to what it could be. But I think this is like a very good shot at that direction, of getting out of that direction, basically, into something bigger.
So I'll use that also. Okay, go ahead.
Just to make one point, I think the speculation focus in the broader crypto space is kind of for two reasons. One, that's what crypto has like proven itself good at to date. But two, I think is kind of like more of a philosophical reason that's not articulated. But speculation is fundamentally about the future. So you don't actually have to do so much right now in terms of transaction throughput or things that might not work because of scalability issues today. But if it's a speculative thing and it's about the future, then you kind of like shift the focus towards the future when obviously, we're going to have ETH2 and it's going to work amazing. So we don't really need to worry about it today. We can just speculate. And when we get there, then we'll be able to do all this fun metaverse stuff. So I think that is actually kind of part of the reason. And people really haven't explored like, hey, what could we do with just a game that has Candy Crush type volume, but using these crypto blockchain tools, just because it hasn't been available. So why worry about it? Let's do something speculative and just shift everyone towards thinking about the future. So it's fun to explore some of that stuff now since we don't have that crutch. We don't need to. I think speculation still is fun and it can be a fun aspect of the game, but we don't need to live there. We can do stuff in the present since these tools are ready right now.
Dan, were you about to say something?
I was basically just going to ask, what do we think the actual market penetration for like play to earn type games that are using cryptocurrency just is in general, like across the entire space? Ethereum, Solana, BSV, like the whole nine. What in terms of if we just look at the gamer, basically the target market, what sort of penetration do we think that these types of things have? Like, what is it at this point? Is it 1%? Is it 4%? I mean, what do we have any baseline for knowing that? I'm just curious if anyone knows those numbers. My assumption is that it's very small. Yeah, play to earn, where whether it's NFTs or some sort of other fungible
and are we going
token.
to define those as games that people play specifically because they're trying to earn, or is it just any game that allows you to collect items and kind of harvest that you may or may not sell?
I would say anything that just allows you to play and you have the potential to walk away with something you didn't have.
Because isn't that most of the mobile casual games, like Clash of Clans, for example? Would that fall into that bucket?
That's a good question.
Like the grandma playing Candy Crush, is that in that bucket?
Yeah, probably not. I would say from like a blockchain. Let's say utilizing the blockchain for payment or some sort of asset.
Yeah, I think the reason Clash of Clans wouldn't necessarily apply. I don't play the game, so maybe this is not totally correct. But what's the definition of have? Right? If you can only use this thing in this one experience, do you really have that thing? If you can't give it to somebody else, if you can't sell it, to what extent do you have it? So I think that might be part of the reason why a Clash of Clans wouldn't feel like a play to earn, because it just kind of exists in this one experience.
So I think, Dan, I don't know necessarily what you're getting at, but for me, that question, the relevance, or the way that I make it relevant, is if you take all of the population and put them into buckets based on what their motivation is to play, then you could ask, okay, where does play to earn fit into that? What does it align with? What's its potential market? What is it? Because the question maybe you're asking is, how big of a deal is this? How big of a market is it potentially? So I kind of group all gamers into just buckets of why they play.
Sure. And I think the motive for a lot of people in play to earn is going to be the earn aspect. And I think what we've been missing, I don't know the numbers. I know that they've done a ton of revenue. I don't Axie Infinity, but I don't know as a gamer, as a person playing the game, is that just me burning a bunch of money, or were there a lot of people making a lot of money? Because I think the turning point for this whole play to earn thing is when people actually start earning. Because now all of a sudden you're going to have these markets before Uber and things like this existed, this sort of gig market where I can just be sitting at the house, have a couple applications on my phone, and go start earning as soon as I enable one of these apps.
I don't want to be too controversial, but I think you always have to control for how much of the current market stats are skewed by manipulated economies.
100%.
Play to earn might be a complete money laundering scheme that is going to skew.
Sure. I guess the point that I'm making is when the everyday average person, assuming wash trading and money laundering aside, I'm talking about real users playing and actually earning. To me, that's the tipping point. That's the chasm that we're trying to cross with these onboarding things. And I think that the thing that I love about building on BSV is it's enabling us to actually tackle that problem. If I'm building on Ethereum right now, that's just an onboarding problem that is actually, in my opinion, unsolvable for the mainstream user. Because as soon as you say $20, $40, $80 fee to even interact, you've lost people. So
except for the people who are there to make huge bags off of the speculation game.
Yeah, it's not gamers, it's speculators.
Exactly. So, and that's my point. And what I'm saying is, I think that is really a rhetorical question. It's the market penetration is so small, and I don't think that we've truly seen sort of that tipping point where a casual gamer that may have nothing to do or has never even held a cryptocurrency come experience one of these games and immediately start getting like earning from it. Like that's such a powerful thing, because now all of a sudden this thing that has had this stigma of like, I just think about the classic example of the girlfriend or the wife getting upset with, their boyfriend because all they do is game. Well, it's like, is that conversation, is it the same conversation between those two people when said gamer is, bringing in an extra $1,000 a month or whatever? Like I go, this conversation took me back.
Regardless of the money though, Dan, that's actually a genius marketing move. Like, hey dudes, play these games because now you have like this excuse to throw back. Like, dude, this is work. I'm working.
Right. Exactly. But I mean, like at what point is it, it's not like, excuse the pun, but like fun and games when it actually is real money. An extra $1,000 for a lot of people is a huge difference. And I go back to,
I mean, you'd have to be the elite to achieve that. So most people, it's going to be the pursuit of that, not necessarily the achievement of it, right?
Not at scale. I mean, making $1,000. I agree. Yeah, I think you could be early to a game. So like a game like Jump on Haste. Ultimately, you're going to have to be really good and to be top on the leaderboard.
The distribution, if the revenue into the system is entry fees, to make that much, I mean, by definition, you're going to have to be at the right end of the, the tail.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, like, you can't make, this at BBG, this is like one of the main things is like, you can't treat the gaming market as the pros. Like, they're a small population of the potential market. Like, so you can't, it's going to be the pursuit of that 1,000 that's the lure, not necessarily everyone achieving it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
can I throw out the framing that I wanted to throw out a second ago, which is, and we can keep talking about this, but I just want to frame it of like, for anyone who's listening, like why are we all friends, and why are we all working together? Like what's this world we're trying to achieve together? Like what is our association with each other? Because you've got the Nifty Jigs team here building Duro Dogs, Haste. You've got what seems like it would be a completely competing platform. Brandon here from Handcash, like, and Run, like what? I just want to frame like what is our association? Because I think that's an interesting thing to point out that we all take for granted. Most people don't understand it.
I won't speak for everyone else. I mean, I can tell you flat out for us, Joe's obviously not on the call, and like Eric and Keith, they sort of came later, but this is for us, what we're building was about demonstrating a micropayment, period. Like, it wasn't necessarily like, oh, we want to go build a gaming platform. It just kind of evolved into that. Our desire was sort of built out of this frustration of seeing a beautiful, like such a beautifully designed thing that we had in sort of Bitcoin in its original design, and to see that sort of morph into this speculative sort of circus that it's become. Like that, it was the frustration that ultimately led us to that. So like to your point about, some people could look and be like, oh, a game in the Haste arcade is a direct competitor of like Duro Dogs or, any other game that's out in the ecosystem. I don't really see it that way, and I never really have, because I think that it's such an interesting dynamic to be building on a network where we should as a company be pulling for the success of any of our competitors, because that's just strengthening the network, right? Like you don't necessarily have that dynamic in a world where they freely print money, right? Like it just doesn't work. But now all of a sudden it's like, yeah, you want to be the best that you can be. You want to be competitive, but it's different. There's a nuance to it. And,
So is it fair to say all of us here have this, aligned, mission of promoting BSV's adoption and growing the network, and we all are aligned on, we believe that gaming is one of the avenues that we can make that happen, and that gamification of things and just tapping into that energy is that's what brought us all together, is how do we bring the future of American gaming through are kind of a joint association and, working together.
I would say that's a fair assumption for me.
And I guess not American, future of like global gaming, future of blockchain gaming. Sorry to be so American centric.
Well, let me add to what Dan said. I think I agree with what Dan said. I think that is a mission that I care deeply about too, is this world of micropayments. And, I've long been convinced that Bitcoin, I think this is one unifying factor, is that Bitcoin is the best way to do that. But that for me, that's not my main motivation. That's a big motivation. But I think for me personally, when I was at Snap, we often talked about, like, I hate to even mention this phrase, but owning your data, right? Sorry, we wouldn't talk about that. We talk about privacy there. There's this idea that, like, the apps would have these data silos that users get locked into, and then of course the network effects just keep them locked into it. And we've seen this play out lots and lots of times. And it wasn't so much the data as it just led to a less interesting world. Because look at us right now. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, arguably 5 different companies working together on something here. That's really not as common outside of blockchain. And I think having a single database layer and then different companies that specialize on it, that's just a more interesting world to me. And I want to see more apps that talk to each other, that and integrate with each other. And I do see blockchain as the path through that. Right now we have a wallet and a game that interact seamlessly together. And I know that's pretty common in crypto, but it really should be a lot more than just that too. So I see BSV as like the best platform for that, and whether micropayments or allowing apps to work together, I think for me that's kind of my drive.
I think what attracted me personally to this group of companies and people, there's a lot of folks in BSV who I think are really passionate about BSV itself and kind of vision of the world and the ways in which the world could be better via BSV. And also it shouldn't be understated the degree to which I think there's just a general desire to be right, when a lot of people I think have doubted folks in BSV, whether it's people in their personal network or just kind of encountering a lot of backlash from a professional standpoint or just from a social media standpoint. I think there's just a strong desire to...
You're trying to say BSV is not popular?
I think we all know it's not popular. I'm guessing everyone who's listening to this stream knows it's not popular. So, but I think that specifically what I really like about working with Run and Handcash, Haste, and Built by Gamers, and a number of other companies is that I think that we're all really oriented around the idea that the way you do this, the way you bring this technology to the world, isn't necessarily by talking about it, although we are talking about it right now. It's fun. But it's by creating a great product, serving the mass market, and just delivering these features in the most kind of seamless, perfect, beautiful way possible. And just making sure that I think that some people have a tendency to put the future over the present. So they want to jump right to the future. They want to build the world they want to see in 10 years today. And I think that's admirable, but I also think that doesn't always work. And sometimes if you get too far ahead of yourself, you end up building for nobody. And I think that these companies were really trying to figure out how can we build for today's consumer, today's gamer. And I think that we all understand the technology can do it, but we also see that it's a massive challenge, but a challenge that we're actually willing to embrace and take head on, and not just be satisfied with, hey, I'm building something, and yeah, BSB's unpopular, and that's kind of why my thing is not that successful. But hey, someday people are going to realize, and then I'll be here waiting. I think that we're really focused on how we actually go out in the world and get this done now, versus just survive till the time is right and the adversity is lessened. Because I think that mentality ultimately is not going to work, and you really have to be focused on the present, focused on creating an amazing product today. And if you don't do that, you're not going to be successful.
I think that's a change for us, though, because I think as a community, we've been conditioned to be waiting for the soon. So I know I personally need to do better at what you're saying and make the most of the hand in front of us. And I'm sure most people would say that we are not guilty of that, but I feel like we are guilty, or at least I am, of waiting for the next thing. So, yeah, I need to do better at that.
Well, I think that you're doing a lot, including getting the folks in this room together in a big way, or just being a big rallying point. So we all appreciate you, man.
Well, I mean, the question I was about to ask next was like, what's the future we're building? But now I feel like, okay, that's me being guilty of, just trying to focus on the future's coming to us rather than like, holy crap, what do we have to do next week? And I know each of us are working feverishly on things to release this month. So yeah, but I mean, it's so fun to focus on a year from now. What is it going to look like? I think it's going to be pretty exciting. All the things that we're building as they start to coalesce and start to gain momentum, we start to kind of break out of some of the shackles. It's very exciting to be focused on the future. Brandon, I dare you to say something.
I'm just happy to see, people like Haste and Nifty Jigs building. I think at least the payment system we have with Handcash, I think it's amazing that we can do these tiny payments for such a fraction of a penny. And
how do you handle when people say, hey, Brandon, yeah, you do these tiny payments with a fraction of a penny, but win NFTs, win Web3 wallet?
So I would say that we do have NFTs, and it's through Nifty Jigs.
So explain that.
So your Nifty Jigs NFTs are stored in your Handcash wallet, and every time that your Nifty Jigs NFT is used, that transaction is being signed by your Handcash wallet with your Handcash keys. So, I mean, the thing that makes Handcash unique is that we have this keyless system where we use threshold signatures. So we don't need this Web3 experience with this extension, because like we can manage permissions a different way, and like a user doesn't need to like sign every transaction manually.
Handcash is a victim of their own UX being so good. So people don't even know that they have NFTs through Handcash because they're just like sending a gold chain to their buddy in a game, and Handcash is like hiding all of that complexity from them.
So when the Nifty Jigs marketplace comes, will that be when it becomes more kind of people will feel like they have a wallet of NFTs?
Yeah, my theory of NFTs is it's really all about context. And I think an NFT needs like a marketplace or like a home screen. And to an extent, the Duro Dogs inventory is that. But I think, if there's a marketplace and you sign in, like, these are my items, and I think the whole picture will be more clear. And I think maybe it is a little abstracted right now.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. One thing I would quickly say about the web wallet is that, or the sort of browser extension style wallet, I think that there's this idea that if we only had something that looked exactly like what Ethereum has, then all the Ethereum people would come to BSV because they realize how much better it is. And that's just like so wrong that it's laughable.
Yeah.
And
The thing, I would just add, there is a great BSV extension wallet, like the Senselet wallet, can do all those things. So I don't think that's the problem. They just, like you said, they want, if you have MetaMask, then you'll have all of the success Ethereum's had.
I don't know if that's true, but I have a couple questions coming in from the broadcast, people watching right now. So first one, this will be relatively quick, I think. Do you guys spend money making the small transfers, the transactions, while people are playing? I think the answer is that that there is a cost associated at some level with the transactions. No?
Yeah.
so, go ahead, Dave.
You go.
I'll take it from here. I just,
Yeah, I mean, we pay for people's fees. There's some spots in the game where you'll notice that there's kind of like maybe a weird cost. Like, for example, if you send an item to somebody else, we'll charge you one treat, which might seem like a really sort of strangely low price, and like, why is there a price there at all? And it's just because we actually, we are paying for fees, and so we have to charge something. There has to be some kind of like opportunity cost within the game so that people can't just like literally spam transactions.
So are you saying that there's a
you point out,
huge
Jackson,
treat
that
hoard that the Duro Dogs team has amassed? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, we have
Jackson,
a lot
put
of
it in context
of
of
treats.
like BSV fees are like so small, because this might be
Yeah,
They are, but I want to hear about the
someone's
treat
outside.
hoard. Actually, that's the important part right now.
Yeah, we have kind of, you might even be able to call it like a bottomless treat hoard. We got treats for days, but don't worry, we're gonna use them responsibly.
All right, next question. There's another question coming in. And I think you guys kind of addressed this earlier. The question is it okay if I make NFTs from my own Duro Dogs?
Yeah, we're gonna make this.
Yes.
Sorry.
We're gonna make this a lot easier. So, we have limited resources, and there's kind of a ton of stuff that's on our roadmap and things that we want to do that's not even on the roadmap yet. This is on the roadmap, is making a tool to make this much simpler. I think the final version is like a no-code tool that anybody could use to make items.
Right.
It won't be that to start, but we're working on it already, and we want to make it so that, we already have some third-party items in the game. Every company on this call has one of those. The woman of BSV released an item. We want to open that up to more people, which is really kind of like the whole ethos of what we're doing is we think Duro Dogs and ultimately this buzzword of the metaverse is a project too big for one company. So we need a lot of other people adding to it to make it as vibrant as I think people imagine it being. So short answer is yes. And no timeline yet, but, soon TM.
I think what
Would
you
they
guys were
ever
talking
consider-
about, hold on just a second. I think what you guys were talking about earlier in regards to the user experience of Handcash being so good that it disappears into the background also kind of abstracts away the concept that most of these things occurring within the Duro Dogs games, right, are tokenized, right? That these things are NFTs. It just doesn't register the same way as it would on other platforms. Specifically Ethereum and MetaMask, because you aren't necessarily interacting with them as valued assets, right? Within a marketplace and things like that. So it's hard to necessarily think about it that way. But I think that the person was asking this question, and I think what they were talking about perhaps also is like, is there a way to further extend the tokenization of the NFTs of the dogs that they have? There's one other question they're asking: can I play with multiple devices? Well, you could play with multiple devices, but you're gonna need multiple logins, I think, would be the answer to that one. Is any of that
I can't
register?
Yeah. Let me add something. So I don't want to answer for Jack and Dave here. I'm going to talk more about the run protocol on a technical level, but it's definitely possible in theory for third parties to build NFTs on top of dogs that are launched by Duro dogs.
Right.
And the way this would look is like maybe a company comes around and says, for anyone with a dog, we're going to let them buy a house. And they launch a house. They become the house provider. Now, where can you see your dog in your house? A different app, not Duro dogs, but people can build collections on top of collections. Technically, this is definitely possible. And I really would love to see that too. It'd be really cool to see. I just want to mention one quick thing about the last question too, which is about does Duro dogs pay for all the fees? I think it's really cool that they do this, and I want to say that Crypto Fights also does this. They pay for the fees for maybe not all, but many of the game moves, game transactions.
I think it's cool that they pay for us to play this game too.
Well, the economics work out. This is the important part. Is it to this model as an example because yes, that's a sunk cost for the business, but if you can make this up in other areas like fees for trades, that's probably the best place. I think it works out. But I would say on a protocol level, from the run protocol side, I think the fees are way too high right now. And so actually we're working on an update to run that will be one of the changes will be much, much smaller metadata inside of every run transaction. It cuts it down to like where we're doing some math on. It's like a token send, like just sending an NFT from one person to another. And this would be very similar for like making a move in the game, any game. We're talking like 50 bytes. If that doesn't register, like it's so small that it's almost the cost of just an actual BSV transaction. And so that's really, really important if your business is paying for transactions, and the run protocol is really shooting for that as a goal, to have as cheap transactions as possible, on a blockchain.
I think this is such an important piece to actually scaling, and it is in the real world going to be completely unrealistic to expect consumers and end users to consume these fees. I mean, it's just not the world that we live in. I mean, any place that you go, the merchant is the one that is, has the processing fees.
Right.
And, this is why you need extremely low cost. So, for example, this is something that's happening in the background. We do plan to expose it at some point in the UI, but, for every game that you play, for example, in the Haste Arcade, we're writing the score data to chain. And we're subsidizing that cost, because there was a time we were passing it along to the end user, but it's just like, no, it doesn't. The fees are so small that we can eat that cost. And I think that in order to reach, in order to reach true adoption, like this has to be the case. And, if you're out there building, keep that in mind, because the world that we live in, you don't go and, buy a cheeseburger for lunch and pay the fees that the merchant owes for processing the payment. So I wanted to state how it's a very, very important thing that merchants do this and have the ability to do that, because the fees are so small.
You know what, Dan, you raised a really good point there too, and by extension you might even start to look at the entirety of blockchain in the same capacity, where you say like, okay, node operators, miners in general, anybody looking to build on top of blockchains, they're going to be willing to just pay the cost of interacting with a blockchain as part of their IT or their financial compliance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Are there any other questions? Because if not, I was going to completely derail on a comment, but I don't want to do that. If
No,
They're gonna be
there
about
are
to
no
get
other
NFT.
there are no other questions coming in right now. So feel free. We just had a couple of questions. So it was good.
This concept of subsidy has been on sort of my mind, and just like if we ever do have a government regulated sort of I would say liquid stable coin on BSV, I just think that there were, if you take someone like, if you take a platform like Handcash, who is really building tools and things for other developers and other merchants to build on, even there's a scenario where even Handcash, with processing tons and tons of payments in the future, could subsidize those costs and then just build the developers and build the merchants, at the end of the month. I mean, that's sort of like how things work now. So like we get our AWS bill at the end of the month, type of thing. And, they're keeping track of all these transactions anyway. The subsidy thing is interesting.
Can I offer
paying for fees is 100% on the Handcash's roadmap for users.
Can we change the way we talk about it to abstracting away paying fees? Because it offends my accountant brain that you're calling it subsidized, because there's nuance difference there, that you are charging, like you are making profit. So I think the distinction there is you're subsidizing, or sorry, you're abstracting. You're abstracting away the fee.
That's also part of it from like a UX point of view. So it's not just that it's shitty to like pay a fee as a user, but
the main crux of it is you're abstracting it away so that it's not part of the UX.
But even if you had infinite money as a customer, it's like with Duro Dogs, so every time you do a play action and the XP increases, that's written to the dog. So even if our customer had infinite money, Jeff Bezos is playing, it's like you don't want to have to like hit this paywall when you have your dog play dead. That's just a terrible user experience.
Yeah,
so I think that's kind of the more important thing almost.
I think that's the whole thing, because it's only on other chains where there's gas fees that you actually pass that expense on to the consumer, because you're not capable of taking that on as an expense.
Yeah, we would have had to pay like $100+ million already on Ethereum.
Right.
Our current
it's
user
just
base.
an operating expense.
That's absolutely insanity. And to think that like
you should really publish that as some kind of like public-facing KPI. Like here's the equivalent in gas fees.
I mean, we just processed a transaction with 1,100 NFTs in the trade. I know that we've at times published like how much it would cost to get on Ethereum. In this case, probably like 25 grand or more. 100 grand.
That's absolutely insane.
Yeah, it's just like totally. Which is why those things are selling for. I mean, they have to be speculative items that are worth $50 million, because who's going to eat the fee? Even on a single transfer, it's just like it's unworkable unless it's more efficient.
Tying this into outside of the blockchain world, if you are running like a social media app, let's say Facebook, there's a concept called ARPU, average revenue per user, and this is basically the average amount of money your company makes, usually on ads in the case of Facebook or Google. But however they make money, there's a expected revenue the company's going to make per user. And so Facebook's like $20 or something like that, like pretty high. I think Snapchat's was like $3. But and that money, by the way, pays for infrastructure. So Facebook is very expensive to run. So that's where that money goes. But in blockchain land, a certain amount of that, you're going to have infrastructure, definitely, but you're also these transaction fees, and you can consider them infrastructure costs if you want, but they basically get subtracted from your revenue per user. And so if you're making, $2 per user is great. If you're making $2 per user, how many transactions can you do with that on average per user? You got to do the math on that, and I think you'll see that's really good. You can do probably thousands of transactions a year on that, but we need to get the fees even lower because ideally it should be a non-issue. You shouldn't think about it. So I actually think I know there's a lot of advertising people that are against advertising. I don't know if this is exactly what we're talking about here, but I don't think advertising is maybe totally opposed to building on blockchain. I think you could have a pay-to-earn app where some of the fees are there's still an ad model that goes along with that. I don't think these are totally separate ideas.
I've never heard anyone be against that.
I've seen people on different places say that, but I'm glad you said that.
I haven't heard people actually building stuff be against it.
That's probably true.
The people that are building stuff are looking for revenue streams in general, I would say, but in the sense that advertising does have some compromise, I think that's generally understood.
It'd be an interesting thing in Haste if there was an ad version where some of that money was like if you could still do some version of ILP with the revenue that Haste made from putting ads up, and then obviously you'd have the paid version next to it just as like an A/B test. I wonder how people would value their time when given the opportunity to.
I think your struggle is always going to be finding sponsors. If it's like if Haste basically said, hey, you don't have any money, but I'll pay you 10 Duro to watch this ad, just finding a sponsor that is on brand is going to be hard when they know only people seeing your ad is going to be people who are trying to get 10 Duro for watching your ad versus, the more efficient way, effective way nowadays. It's like targeted based on attributes and stuff.
Well, how is that different than like games in the App Store where there's a free version and a paid version?
Well, they have to do that because they don't have micropayments, and it's a
there's games where you can buy like the paid app is $1 ad free.
Yeah,
and then so the people advertising to the non-paid version are advertising to people that don't have $1 to pay.
Yeah, and all of those ads. For me, if I was the one making a game, do I want those ads associated with my game? And this is just me being a snob because, like, I'll judge games quality based on kind of their revenue model and what kind of ads. I know if it's purely just like bottom of the barrel sponsors, that game is there purely to be like empty calories.
From my experience, the ads in the free tier of games are often for other games, which is kind of funny because they want you to download their other game where they're going to try to convert you, but you didn't convert in the game that you originated in.
Yeah, that's a good point too. One quick aside, not to go back, but Niv, when you're talking about, or Breton, when you were talking about, the revenue per user, I think it would be interesting also to point out the profitability, because you could go onto Ethereum and say, each user's has like $10,000 in transactions, but the profit's going to be like less than 1% because all the transaction fees. Whereas you might say there's a $2 user, but the profit's 99%. It's an interesting.
Yeah, definitely. You would want to. I'd be curious to publish this. I'd be curious, like where let's fast forward 10 years from now, and everything's a lot bigger than where it is. I'd be curious to for someone to do some studies on first, how does ARPU change in a blockchain world where you can make money off of fees on trading, which depends on the value of what's being traded. That's something new. And but then you have this higher infrastructure costs in the sense that you have these transaction fees. And all that, you subtract those two and you get profitability. I don't know where it'd be, but I'm looking forward to like 10 years from now we find out, how does ARPU change in a blockchain world? And my guess is that it's going to be higher because there's more, just like Google. The reason they're able to make money is it's your place you go on a regular basis to. It's your portal to other places. Well, I think wallets and games on blockchain are portals to spending money. That's just what they are. Just like Amazon, the one-click button. It's so easy to use that all of a sudden just makes their whole platform more compelling. I think the same is true for blockchain. That once people get used to using it for trading and buying and selling stuff, there will be more monetization opportunities. But yeah, we'll see.
No, I totally agree. One of our team members has been building kind of, really focused on growth marketing, product related to growth in Silicon Valley companies, companies that we've all heard of for the last few decades, and really a pioneer in that industry. He saw the value in BSV for a number of reasons, but partially because of things like ARPU and just the challenge of getting someone to make their first payment. Basically, it's really hard to get someone to pull out their credit card the first time. But once someone's already a paid user, it's a lot easier to upsell them. And so he saw a massive opportunity with things like Handcash or micropayments in general, where if the barrier to your first payment is much lower, then you're kind of skipping the hard part and getting right to the easy part, which is just upselling by providing more and more value. And I look at like Haste, for example. Taylor mentioned that you could see Haste as a competitor to us, although obviously I could see it like that. But anyone that Haste gets to pull out their credit card and buy BSV, when they come to Duro Dogs, the friction for them to start making payments is so incredibly low that I expect like our percentage of paid users who have that origin is going to be so much higher than, a comparable game that doesn't have access to something like a Handcash, and also vice versa, of course. And so that's, I think, a big part of like, if I were going to suggest to someone to make a game that uses Duro Dogs NFTs, that would be a big part of why, is because, hey, even if we have fewer users than other communities you could be building inside of, our users are going to be able to start making payments inside of your game after one click. And that's just really, really new and really, really powerful. And so I think that that's going to allow for apps that are connected to ecosystems like Handcash or Nifty Jigs or Haste to really grow rapidly compared to their counterparts. This advantage of once you convert a user in one app, your ability to drive revenue across any other app connected to this ecosystem so much.
You're making me think about the fact that once you convert your dollars to chips in a casino, it's so much easier to spend them.
Yeah, I mean, what if every time you were at the poker table, you had to swipe your credit card to make a bet? Or even worse, enter your credit card information. That would suck. It would not be a very popular game, sure. And it would also be stupid for them to not, I mean, they'll take your chips if you want to buy a drink or buy food, money. And they sell a lot more of everything. And we don't want to be, a Vegas casino or anything. But the point is, there's a lot of purchases in life that actually provide value. There's a lot of people who play games, and they really should just pay the $1. Like, come on. Just pay the $1. You play this game every day. Why are you watching ads? You're just wasting your life. But there's just like a psychological thing, and there's the payment friction, and every time they make a payment, it's just a terrible experience. And so they just waste their time watching. And I'm really excited to be able to make it so dead simple to pay for things that no one's ever going to want to do that again. Not to say ads are not acceptable. I think they are, but I just think that it's such a horribly inefficient use of everybody's time. Like, revenue from ads is just not that meaningful, and the amount of time that a user spends and the value of that time that advertisement places is so low that I think that if we can just, I think that with these tools we can really change the culture around ads. That's both from like a bottom line standpoint as well as from like a societal standpoint. I think it'll be one of the most profound changes of what we're trying to do here.
Well, and it's not extinguishing advertising from games. I think what we're going to do is make it so much more effective in other targeted ways to where companies can go sell ad space or integrations, but it won't be. I don't want it to be in. We're going to pay you $5 for letting us show you this banner or this advertisement. Maybe that happens, but I just think there's so much more effective ways that are unlocked by everything we're building.
Not to overcomplicate things, but I mean, if you use the existing model that's out there, where free players are seeing ads, and then it's like the incentive to get rid of the annoying ad is like, let me upgrade. But in this particular example, I could see a use case where we haven't really given it a ton of thought, to be honest. We have discussed it at times, but nothing in great detail. But just as I'm sitting here listening to everyone speak, something that could be potentially interesting would be like, we've opened up games, for free players to be able to come in and play if you haven't connected your Handcash wallet yet or something like that. But the next iteration that we're going to be releasing, where we've spent a ton of time actually thinking at a very granular level about the onboarding experience and about the different types of users that we're going to be onboarding, a potential, like, I guess, ad placement opportunity would be for those new users that haven't connected a Handcash wallet yet, right? Like, it's like, hey, we don't actually need you to spend money to get rid of these annoying ads. We just want you to over that hurdle of, let's get you a Handcash wallet so that you can start earning, right? Like, because I think, again, that's still a barrier to entry. Like, you're coming to a platform to game. In most scenarios, you're not leaving the platform. Like, if I go create, a Roblox account for the kids or whatever, this idea of having to go to a third party as a part of that experience can be a bit of a challenge. But I don't know. That's the ad thing is interesting in that context.
Yeah, I think the upsell to a subscriber base or to becoming a subscriber is probably a good mechanism. So, hey, we've been going for about an hour and a half. Probably going to wrap it up here. If you guys have any final thoughts or comments that you didn't want or didn't get to express, but that you do want to express, let's take that time now.
I'll go first. Brenton, let's be friends. This is the first time we've talked, but it's a shame.
I agree. Let's hang out sometime.
Okay. Come shoot guns with me.
I saw your pictures and I got a little jealous. I'm not going to lie. I was like, I'm so close. I could just drive down to meet you guys. So we'll do that.
Brenton, are you still in Los Angeles or?
No, I'm in the Jackson Hole, Wyoming, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, so I still got ties to California. So actually my wife's there right now. I go back pretty often. I got a kid on the way. So maybe that'll be on pause for a little bit later this year. But yeah, I'm back in California relatively often, but no, I'm in the Jackson area.
Did you ever Did you ever spend any time in the South Bay? Because I'm in Manhattan Beach.
Yeah, I mean, I would go down there a lot. In fact, Joshua Hensley, he used to have business down. He's a guy in the space, for people who don't know. He used to have business down there, and so I'd actually drive down and meet him. And actually, I didn't know you were down there too. I mean, beautiful area. Still loved living there a lot. I think we can save some money where we are right now, but I got to make it down there. I'd love to.
No doubt about that. But yeah, man, if you're ever this way, give me a shout.
Awesome.
Sounds good. Well, hey, I appreciate you guys taking the time.
I got one thing to say before we wrap up here.
We'll go ahead.
Yeah, so a lot of the tools that we're building, plan is ultimately we want other people, things that we use to build Duro Dogs, Rough Runner, we want these to be fully open and just accessible where you don't really need to get in touch with us. You can just build. That's not the case today, but we are, we want to start building this group of people that want to build games. If you played Rough Runner and you were like, yeah, that was cool, but I can make something better using those assets, let's do it. So get in touch with us if you think you're a better game dev than us, and we want you to be, so you can make a really profit, make some money, and add some value to the user base, but not in an altruistic way, in a way that can benefit and bring in some BSV while we're still at these low prices. So get in touch with me at Dave at unboundedenterprise.io, and we can start the conversation and get some people building.
Or contact them on Twitter. Hey, thanks for the conversation, guys. Been a good one. Very happy to hear from you all and put you all together in the same room to hash this stuff out. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for coordinating
in the listening space.